Namaste. Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I'm Dr. Padma Sugavanam, lecturer of music in Sri Venkateshwara College of Music and Dance, Tirupati, and I'm also a professional musician. Today we are going to be studying about Indian culture. In particular, our paper is on Indian aesthetics and fine arts, and the module Bhakti Saints of South India. Our learning objectives are follows. We are going to be learning about the saint composers of India, the philosophies that they preached, and the impact and relevance to society at their times and today. This particular module is going to concentrate on the work of saints of South India. Spirituality has been an eternal quest of mankind. India has been a fountainhead of spirituality. At several points in time, saints and savants have cropped up at every nook and corner of the country, and they have spread their message of spirituality, devotion, and upliftment and unitedness with the Supreme Being. The importance of bhakti has been given, expressed, and expounded in so many Shastra texts of India. Why? For the simple reason that man, in his day-to-day hardships and strife, sometimes forgets that there's a higher goal to one's existence. So what our Shastras did is they gave us a few pathways. They said, these are the routes you can take. Continue with your life, perform your duties, and at the same time don't lose track that your ultimate goal is spiritual upliftment. So what are these pathways that they talked about? The main ones expressed in our texts are the Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Karma Yoga. Very simply put, the Jnana Yoga or Jnana Marga deals with inquiry or enlightenment. Bhakti Marga or Bhakti Yoga deals with devotion. Karma Yoga deals with action. Now, of these three paths, the simplest for man to follow has been bhakti. Devotion to one supreme being, to an ideal who is the sum of all the best qualities that man can think of. Attaining union or closeness to such a God or a power or a concept has been taught to us by all the Shastras in their different expoundations. So the Bhakti Marga has been expressed by different saints, different poets, different authors at different points in time. And what do they use as their vehicle of communication? Language, yes, definitely, but also a more potent instrument, music. Music has been used for a long time by many people to express their thoughts and communicate with people their own spiritual experiences and their paths and their preachings, which will uplift other mankind. The lives of these saints and these poets are something of great value to us. Why should we learn about them? Because their spiritual experiences, their path to salvation and enlightenment would inspire us to move up in our lives. Let us begin with a few saints of India, of South India. We are going to start with South India, especially Tamil Nadu, which was the fountainhead of lot of religious and devotional activity from about the 4th century till the 11th, 12th century. After the Kalabhra period, South in the Tamil region saw a springing up of several saints and lot of poetic and musical activity in the religious field. The main ones that contributed to this part of literature and this part of societal change were the Alvars and the Nayanars. Let us begin with the Alvars. The Alvars, the word itself means one who is immersed in his devotion to Lord Vishnu. These Alvars were followers of the Sri Vaishnava sect, and they started from sometime between the 5th century till the 10th century AD, after the Kalabhra period. Their compositions were collected, put together as compilations, and were called the Divya Prabandham. This massive task of collecting all the compositions and bringing them together as an anthology was done by Sri Natha Muni. The poetry of the Alvars is in chaste Tamil, and people have accorded it such value that it is even considered as the Tamil Marai or Tamil Veda. They have equated the Divya Prabandham to the Vedas as well. Now, who are the Alvars? There are 12 noted Alvars: Poigai Alvar, Budat Alvar, Pei Alvar, Tirumalisai Alvar, Nam Alvar, Madhura Kavi Alvar, Kulashekar Alvar, Peri Alvar, Andal, Tondaradippudi Alvar, Tiruppana Alvar, and Tirumangai Alvar. The main philosophical precepts of the Alvars was of Sharanagati and Prapatti, total surrender to the Lord, and that of bridal mysticism or divine love, where the poet feels he is the Nayika or the lady love and the Lord is his consort and expresses his love towards the Lord. Now let us listen to a small excerpt of a Tiruppavai of Andal, who was the only lady Alvar. Chitranjiru kale vandunai sevitun potramarai adiye potrum porul kelai petram me tunnum kulatil pirandu நீ குற்றேவல் எங்களை கொள்ளாமல் போகாது இற்றை பறை கொள்வான். And it continues like this. Let us now look at what impact the work of the Alvars had on society. One is that the collective poetry is now used as part of temple rituals in all Sri Vaishnava temples. And the other was the more significant one, that the Tamil language became the medium of spiritual and religious activity. This was one of the major contributions of the Alvars as well as the Nayanars, who we will be looking at later, that they brought in Tamil to the forefront as a language of religious activity and a language of the temples. Now let us look at the Nayanars. The Nayanars were the devotees of Lord Shiva. They followed the Shaiva Siddhanta. Their basic precept was that Shiva was the center and the Lord of the universe, and they all too lived in the Tamil region and composed in the Tamil language. They dated between about 6th and 8th centuries. The lives of all the saints, Nayanmar saints as they are also called, was compiled by Sekirar in the Periya Puranam. The names of the Nayanars, the list of the Nayanars, they were far more in number than the Alvars. That was first compiled by Sundaramurti Nayanar in his Tirutondar Togai. At a later point, King Rajaraja Chola I, when he heard the songs of these Shaiva saints, was so touched, so moved, that he ordered Nambi Anda Nambi to compile and make an anthology of all the compositions of the important Nayanars. And this was later called the Panniru Tirumurai. Panniru Tirumurai is a work of 12 volumes, a compendium. On your screen now you will see the Tirumurais and the authors with their compositions. The first to the third Tirumurai were compositions of Sambandar, Tirujnana Sambandar. He was the youngest saint of them all, who started composing at the tender age of 3. His Tevarams are in 1 to 3. Tirumurais 4 to 6 are compositions of Tirunavukarasar, also called Appar. Tirumurai 7 are compositions of Sundaramurti Nayanar. So the Tirumurais 1 to 7 are all compositions called Devarams. De in Tamil means God and Aram means a garland. So these were connoted as garlands to God. Tirumurai 8, compositions of Manikavachakar, Tiruvachakam and Tirukkovayar. Tirumurai 9, a compilation of many authors. Tirumurai 10, this is a very important one, that of Tirumular, it's called Tirumandiram. Tirumurai 11, again a compilation. Tirumurai 12 was the Periya Puranam, which recounts the lives, narrates the life stories of all the different Nayanars, which was 63 numbers. The Nayanars came from very diverse backgrounds. They were very heterogeneous. There were common folk, there were kings, there were noblemen, they were from different strata of society. And many of them were not even very highly educated. And the good thing was there were also many women saints amongst the Nayanars. You can see a picture that is Karekal Ammayar. She was one of the important Nayanars amongst the 63. Let us now take a look at a sample of a Thevaram song, Pitta Piraisudi Perumane of Sundaramurthy Nayanar. And this happens to be his very first composition. Let us now listen to that. Pitta Piraisudi Perumane Arulala Pitta Piraisudi Perumane Arulala Yetta Maravade Ninaikindren Manatunai Veitai Penai Tenpal Venai Nallur Urayul Atta Unakalai Idi Allen Yanalame Pitta. And it continues. So, just like the Alvars, the Nayanars also have a tradition of temple singing. These come in families, in the sense they are called Oduvars, and as family heritage from father to son and from father to son, these songs are passed on from generation to generation and are performed as part of temple rituals. Also, the Nayanars shaped religious thinking of South India, bringing about the Bhakti as mainstream religious activity along with the Tamil language. Let's now move on to the state of Karnataka. We are looking at a woman saint called Akka Mahadevi. There you see a picture of her on the slide. Akka Mahadevi was one of the foremost Indian women mystics who hailed from the Karnataka region. She was the torchbearer of the Veerashaiva movement and belonged to the 12th century Common Era. Why we remember Akka Mahadevi is that she was an icon of women's emancipation. She proved to people that women can still break the shackles of society and follow their hearts towards their goal of spirituality. Akka Mahadevi was born in Udutadi in Shimoga district, Karnataka in 1130 Common Era to Nirmal Shetty and Sumati. The whole family had a very pious atmosphere. Her parents were themselves devotees and initiated the little girl at the tender age of 8 into Linga Rahasya. Akka Mahadevi grew up into a young lady of great beauty, but beauty and other worldly matters were not of much interest to her. She had fallen in love with Lord Chenna Mallikarjuna, and her sole aim in life was to attain union with him. An interesting incident in her life proved to be a big turning point. As the young girl Akka Mahadevi was watching a procession of King Kaushika on the streets, the king's sight fell upon this little girl, the young girl, and immediately he was smitten by her. He decided to approach her parents for her hand in marriage, but Akka Mahadevi wouldn't hear of it. She was not interested in marriage. But then royal compulsions and parental influence finally convinced her, and Akka Mahadevi entered into a conditional marriage with the king. She said to him, as long as we remain apart, as long as you do not touch me, I shall remain with you. The king thought, let me just accede to the condition now. As time goes by, the girl will come around. But Akka Mahadevi was steadfast in her piety and chastity. When the king broke his promise, she left him. A sudden surge of spirituality came out inside her. She left the king and moved to Kalyan. Kalyan at that point in time was a center of a lot of religious and spiritual activity because of the establishment of the Anubhava Mandapa by the people of the Lingayat faith. At that point, Allah Mahaprabhu was the head of the Anubhava Mandapa. Akka Mahadevi went there, emancipated as a spirit, a free spirit. She went to join the order of the Lingayats. But the order had to check her worthiness. Therefore, Basaveshwara, himself a great saint, posed several questions to her to ascertain how good Akka Mahadevi was. And her responses shocked everybody. People did not realize what a rare gem they had with amongst them. And then the faith opened their arms and warmly welcomed her inside their fold. Akka Mahadevi composed many vachanas in Kannada. Vachana literature was at that time a very popular form of lyrical literary expression in the Karnataka region. She expressed her spiritual experiences. She wrote about her thoughts on nature, her thoughts about life, her thoughts about human upliftment and many other things through her beautiful lyrics in Kannada. She also composed philosophical works such as Yoganga Trividhi and Srishti Vachana. Her philosophy was that just intellectual inquiry and rigorous practice is not enough to attain salvation. What one required was relentless bhakti. One should have a personal ideal, a personal Godhead, and focus all their attention, all their love on this personal ideal. In her case, it was Lord Chenna Mallikarjuna. In her last days, Akka Mahadevi reached a peak of spirituality. She could not contain herself in Kalyan anymore. She left, went to Sri Shailam. In Sri Shailam, in a plankton grove, it is believed that she merged with her Lord Chenna Mallikarjuna. Why do we remember Akka Mahadevi? She was the first composer of vachanas. She was an icon for all women to follow. She proved that in matters of spirituality, women were as capable as men, and her songs and her beautiful poetry are still cherished in every household of Karnataka. Let us now move down south again to the state of Tamil Nadu, where we will be studying the life of a more recent saint who lived in the 18th century. His name was Tayumanavar. Tayumanavar also was a Shaiva Siddhanta philosopher and saint. He was born to Kediliyappa and Gajavalli in Trichy. Kediliyappa was a member of the council of the Nayaka king Vijayaranga Chokkanatha, who had his capital in Trishirapura, now called Trichinapalli or Trichy. Vijayaranga Chokkanatha was the grandson of the famous Queen Mangammal, who was a very important person in the Nayak lineage of Tamil Nadu. Even as a child, when Tayumanavar's radiance was beheld by other people, they could not but resist themselves in admiration. And the king was no exception from this. And even as a child, he had marked Tayumanavar for royal service. As he grew up, Tayumanavar learnt many shastras, the Tamil language, Sanskrit, logic, and many other sciences. But it was not the sciences and learning and education that appealed to him. He went into great trances when he heard the songs of Appar Sundara and Samandar. He would often go to Malaikote temple in Trichy and sit in meditation and contemplation. These were the things that enthralled the little boy. At the death of his father, even when he was a young boy of about 15, he entered into royal service, into the chancellery of the king Vijayaranga Chokkanatha. He performed his duties to perfection. But though he was in the amidst royalty, though he was in the communication with the king and interacting with all members of nobility, he was still very detached. His priorities were something else. He continued in this path, focusing on his own meditation and his royal duties simultaneously. At this time, he met Arulnandi Shivacharya one day in the temple. He was also called Mauna Guru. At the moment he saw him, Tayumanavar knew that this was his master. He fell at his feet and begged him, "Please take me with you. Please teach me the spiritual sciences." But the teacher gave him Jnanopadesha. At the same time, he said, "My son, please practice what I have taught you. But you are not yet ready for this. Wait till you have a family and beget a son, and then I shall come to you." Tayumanavar went back to his royal duties and continued all the practices his master had taught him. After a time, his spirituality grew to such an intensity that the king himself could not contain his wonder and decided that he would be impeding on his growth if he continued in royal service. So the king established an ashram for him on the banks of the Kaveri river, and Tayumanavar with his disciples Arulaya, Kodaikal Jnani, moved into that ashrama and continued their spiritual quest. When the king Vijayarangachakkanatha died in a battle, his queen Rani Meenakshi had to take charge of the kingdom. At this time, she was helpless and did not have an idea how to run it. So she went back to Tayumanavar and requested him to please come back into royal service. So once more Tayumanavar went back to serve his country. As this continued for a while, the queen started becoming attracted by his divine radiance. And the attraction came to such a point that she wanted to make Tayumanavar her own. But Tayumanavar was not interested in any worldly or material life. So in order to escape the advances of the queen, he had to don the garb of a Nayak soldier, and he fled the country to Rameshwaram. The local king in Rameshwaram welcomed Tayumanavar with open arms and set up a small ashram for him there. After the demise of Rani Meenakshi, the brothers of Tayumanavar went to him and requested him to come back home to Vedaranyam now that the coast was clear for him. As he returned home, they also arranged for his wedding with Matuvar Kurali, with whom he led a very spiritual dampatya. Later on, shortly, there was a birth of a son, Kanaka Sabhapati. After the son was born, he realized that his worldly duties were over and the time for him to move on to higher planes had come. At this juncture, his wife too passed away. He met again with his master, Arulnandi Shivacharya, who took him on a pilgrimage to Chidambaram. At Chidambaram, he was enlightened. He attained the Brahmananda Anubhuti. He remained in Samadhi for several days, after which he took a pilgrimage to all holy centers around the south of India, which culminated in Rameshwaram again. Here he lived a peaceful, simple, austere life with his disciples Arulaya and Kodaikal Jnani. These two faithful disciples wrote down all the poetry of his spiritual experiences as and when he composed them, and they even performed it to small audiences in the local towns. So even at that point in time, the songs of Tayumanavar had attained good amount of popularity. Tayumanavar Swami left his mortal coils in 1742 Common Era. He composed so many philosophically charged poems, and the greatest contribution was his influence on later mystics and saints like Bhagavan Ramana Maharishi, who in many talks refers to the poetry of Tayumanavar Swami. Let us move now to the state of Andhra Pradesh, where we will study the life of another woman saint, Tarigunda Vengamamba. Tarigunda Vengamamba was one of the most beautiful life stories of a woman saint. She lived in the 18th century, was a great devotee of Lord Narasimha and Lord Venkateshwara of Tirupati. Her compositions, poems and rupakas in Telugu and Sanskrit are now becoming great objects of interest for academicians and lovers of poetry. Tarigunda Vengamamba was born in the Tarigunda village in Chittoor district in Andhra Pradesh to Krishnaya and Mangamamba. She belonged to the Nandavarika sect of Niyogi Brahmins. From her very childhood, she had the love of the divine, and she was uninterested in any of the worldly things. As a young lady, her friends mocked her, even thought she was mad because her interests were completely different from theirs. As tradition and custom goes, she was also married off at a very young age to Venkatachalapati, and she lost her husband as soon as they got married. And those times, a young widow, a child widow, had to go through several humiliations and several tribulations, which Tarigunda Vengamamba also had to face. But her focus was more on becoming a yogini, and she did not care for these. She was ably guided by Acharya Subramanyudu in her quest to become a yogini. As time went by, the local people, unable to understand her state of mind, harassed her in several ways. So she decided to move out of Tarigunda and came to the holy land of Tirumala, where her favorite Lord Venkateshwara resided. There, she used to sing a Mutyala Harati for the Lord every night and would leave a few pearls behind for him. When the temple authorities found out that it was Tarigunda Vengamamba who was doing this, they asked her to stop and they exiled her to Tumburukona. But she was undaunted. Tarigunda Vengamamba used to take a tunnel path through the hill of Tirumala, reach the Lord every night and still sing his praise and Mutyala Harati for him every night. When she was found out again, the authorities created a lot of trouble for her and harassed her in many ways. But at every single juncture, the Lord came to her aid and protected her. With miracle after miracle, the people around her started to realize that this was no ordinary person. This was somebody of great spiritual attainment, whom the Lord had accepted personally, and therefore she gained acceptance among the people slowly and steadily. Tarigunda Vengamamba composed many devotional poems, songs, as well as yakshaganas. Some of her important works are Nrisimha Vilasa Katha, Shivanatakam, Chenchanatakam, Rama Parinayam, Vasishta Ramayanam, Ashtanga Yoga Rahasyam, Sri Venkatachala Mahatmyam, and many more. The legacy of Tarigunda Vengamamba remains till date in the fact that several devotees who visit Tirumala for a darshan of the Lord do visit her samadhi as well, which is right next to the temple. Her Mutyala Harati composition is still performed in the Tirumala temple every day at the Ekanta Seva. Even her life story was made into a feature film very recently, and her songs are gaining popularity amongst the public in recent times. Lastly, let us look at the lives of the Dasakuta. The Dasakuta are the group of Haridasas who resided in the Karnataka region and composed many devotional songs. They were the followers of the Dvaita school of philosophy. The Haridasa movement was started by Vyasatirtha, one of the earliest Haridasas. Later on, the Dasas were divided into two groups, Vyasakuta and the Dasakuta. Philosophically, their leanings were towards the same goal, their thoughts and inclinations were the same, but the Vyasakuta followed the Jnana Marga, which involved enquiry and enlightenment, and the Dasakuta followed the Bhakti Marga, where they composed many devotional poems and songs in Kannada and in Sanskrit. The Haridasa movement started in the Vijayanagara region, originating in the Hampi area, led by Sant Vyasatirtha. Later on, Raghavendra Swami from Mantralaya gave it a big impetus, and many saints came in and poured out their hearts, poured out their devotional outpourings as songs and poems. The teachings of these saints slowly started spreading into neighboring states, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, and even parts of Maharashtra. One would see the peak of Haridasa activity, literary activity, between about the 14th to the 16th centuries. Some of the notable dasas you can see on the screen: Sri Padaraya, Vyasaraya, Vadiraja, Purandaradasa, etc. The compositions were a huge body of work, and they are called Dasara Padagalu or Devaranamas. They are epitomes of philosophical brilliance and poetic beauty. Let us now just look at one song, Ni Maye Yolago, of Sri Kanakadasa, and look at the spiritual heights of his thought. Kanakadasa says, "Are you a creator of illusion? Or is the illusion your creation? Are you part of the body? Or is the body part of you? Is space within the house or house within the space? Or are both space and house within you? And so on and so forth. We can understand the level of philosophy, the heights of his lyrical expression through such songs. Such was the expression of the Dasa Sahitya. The contribution of the Dasas was not restricted to the field of lyrics and poetry and religion alone. They had a major role to play in the development of Carnatic music, which is the South Indian classical music. For example, Purandaradasa mentions 32 ragas in one of his songs. The Dasas codified the Tala system, especially the Suladi Talas. In fact, the contribution of the Dasas, especially Purandaradasa, to music is so great that today he is revered as the Pitamaha or the founding father of South Indian classical music. As we have seen through the lives of all these saints and Bhakti poets, we can understand that India has been a great fountainhead of spirituality. Poets and mystics express their spiritual experience and philosophical thoughts through beautiful lyrical poetry and songs. And the message of devotion and divine love crossed all mundane barriers, and the quest for attaining spiritual oneness with the ultimate was the main aim. For more information, please go through the e-text provided in the module. Thank you.